First story. Fiance cheated on me with her coworker in my bed. So I spoiled her, sent on a solo vacation and ghosted her. Then had revengeous ex with her mom. First time posting, long time reader, short time member of Reddit. Not sure if this is pro-revenge, nuclear revenge, or nuclear ghosting. But here goes. The players are myself, fiance, fiance's mom. Time frame 2013 to 2016. It has obviously been several years since the incident, and I literally have never told anyone in my new life about this. Tonight I have some good wine to drink and figure I'll let my fingers do the talking. I thought I had met the perfect woman. We met in the last year of college. We met at a party and hit it off instantly. She was a beautiful blonde with sun-kissed skin, and she could have been a model. Think Kate Upton type figure. She was kind, compassionate, sympathetic, a good listener, and had an active life with many friends. She liked my friends, and it was awesome over the 3 years we knew each other in how our friend groups merged. Several of our friends began dating each other. It was some of the best times of my life. I was on for a postgraduate degree in finance, and she had a degree in contractual law. This is just to say we ended up being successful in our own rights. But I'm no slouch in the looks department either. 5'11", 190 pounds. And like the gym. I wasn't a super athlete, but let's just say I was built. But I wasn't very shy and didn't have a lot of prior relationships prior to meeting her. The first evening we met, we were smitten. First night, we talked all night. Then it went to texting phone calls daily, then dates weekly. And then after a year when I started working my new job, she moved in. I loved her family, and her family loved me. Mostly her mother, as her father was standoffish as he was to everyone. It was a whirlwind romance. After 2.5 blissful years of overseas vacations, hiking trips, and luxury vacations, I proposed to her. She said yes. I was over the moon. She was doing all the planning for the wedding. We were talking about our futures together, buying a house, children, and family trips that we were going to take together, and all such things like that. Then it happened. One evening after we both get home to our apartment, she is a little distant. I think I noticed it right away, as we were always very affectionate towards each other. This would only happen about once a week for the first month after proposal, then it was more frequent. I would have been none the wiser, except that I used to listen to a lot of Reddit on YouTube. So, I waited and observed. These bouts of ignoring me would only last a couple of hours. Then she would be right back to normal. But after 6 months, wedding in a year, she was like this almost every night. As ex was still great. Relationship with her parents is still great. But over Thanksgiving at her parents' home in Louisville, Kentucky, we lived just north of DC. She was standoffish towards me in front of her mother. Now her mother was a very observant woman. She pulled her daughter aside to talk to her, and I could hear them arguing. After some heated but muffled words, they returned to the rest of the family and carried on like nothing was going on. I figured I could ask her about it later and did. She was not willing to talk about it and asked me to wait till we were home to discuss it. I agreed, as I loved her deeply and thought we could work through anything. Her mother was an older version of her. Same stunning looks, just a few grays in her long, thick blonde hair. This is important later. Back home, I asked her about it, and she was unwilling to discuss it. When pressed on it for a week, she finally confessed that a guy at her work was trying to get to know her better. She wanted to be forthcoming, so she showed me her phone, and as I looked through it, I noticed that all the texts that would have happened during the times she was withdrawing from me were removed. There was nothing untoward in the texts. But I did go into her phone settings and turned on her locator on her phone, as we shared the same phone plan, and I honestly thought it would make me see that she was not doing anything wrong. Was I wrong? That second weekend after Thanksgiving, she had a company Christmas party. I had planned on going but came down with food poisoning and had to back out. She had a girlfriend pick her up from our apartment, as they planned on drinking a lot and had a DD for the evening. We had planned on going out all night, so I told her to have a blast and I would see her in the morning. So, as I'm puking my guts out and barely able to get off the toilet for more than 30 minutes, I grabbed my phone and watched her location. First it was a restaurant, then the venue of the company party, then a bar. None of this alarmed me until I saw her phone stop in a downtown hotel. At this point, I was miserable in more ways than 3. Projectile vomiting out my butt, mouth, and now soul. I finally fell asleep due to sheer exhaustion at 2 a.m. At 7 a.m., I awoke and saw she was still at the hotel. At noon, she finally comes home, and I am on the mend. She loves me up, and I asked her about the previous night without mentioning anything about knowing her locations. She talks about the restaurant, party, and bar, but then says she went to her girlfriend's house to crash for the evening first lie. For the next 3 months, she has to start working later and later, 3 to 4 days a week. As I start asking her about it, she becomes more and more defensive. I talked to her mom one evening when her fiance didn't come home until late. I asked her mom about the Thanksgiving conversation, and she admitted to me that she thought her daughter might be stepping out of our relationship because of how she read her body language. She also said that her daughter was being more and more distant with her in their weekly texting conversations. With all this speculation that was going on in my mind, I kept it to myself. 2 weeks later at work, I ended up getting a new project at my company that was going to require me to fly to the Midwest Monday through Friday for the next 5 weeks, starting in 2 weeks. It came with an increase in salary, and as I broke the news to my fiancée, she was delighted for me. I didn't think, though, that she was excited for the same reasons I was. So, I went online and ordered 4 motion-activated spy cameras for my apartment. I put one in the living room entry area, one in the kitchen, one in our bedroom, and one looking down our hallway. They were very small and connected to the internet via a hidden network, so they couldn't be spotted on the Wi-Fi network. I secured the cameras with a password and waited. On my first week out, she had girlfriends over the first 2 nights and never worked late once. The third night, a guy came over. I was enraged. I'm sitting there in my hotel room screaming at the monitor and calling her every name in the book. Then they went all the way, first on the couch, then in our bed. She bent for ways for him that I didn't know were possible. What was the worst was that as I was watching them get it on, I called her to see how her day went. She hears her phone ringing and holds her hand up for him to stop giving her anal and answers the call. I asked why she was breathing heavily and said she was at the gym working out. As soon as the call is over, she goes right back to doing the dirty. When I got home Friday evening, I ignored her and went right to bed, and early Saturday got up and went cycling. I was so upset that I didn't even realize that I biked over 50 miles from our apartment. The furthest I had biked before was 30 miles. But that day I went 105.6 miles. Getting back absolutely exhausted, I showered. Then she and I went out that evening and had fun with our friends and had a lot to drink. Is it breakup as X when the one you're going to break up with is oblivious? I was bursting inside. Heartbreak, anger, rage, and feelings of betrayal all swirled around in my heart and mind. She, who used to be so attentive, was unaware of all this. It hurt so much because I loved her so much. I finally confided in one of our mutual friends, and he told me that they all knew about it for months. I was finally told they all felt sorry for me, but no one again said a damn thing to me. Which is why they stopped inviting us out with them. I hadn't noticed it before, but I could look back and see that about 3 months prior, they gradually invited me less and less. So, I figured I would try and win her back the next weekend. I planned the entire weekend as a complete weekend of spoiling her in every way. Wined and dined, pampering, massages, rubs, and talking to her about future plans, and about how much I loved her. I knew I was starting to break through when after her 4th glass of wine she started to cry. And I could tell the guilt was coming up to the surface. I asked her what was wrong, but she would choke up every time she tried to speak. I then told her that if she did something in her past, or was having some kind of conflict in her mind that she needed to speak to me about, I was more than willing to talk with her about it. And if forgiveness was needed, then I was more than willing to forgive and move on. The only words that came out of her mouth were how much she loved me. It actually hurt to hear that from her, as I now had 4 separate videos of her and the other guy in our apartment getting it on. Over the next 8 weeks of traveling to the Midwest, the trips lasted for what would be 10 weeks. I recorded over 41 hours of her having sex with what I found out was her coworker. She never worked late once while I was gone. I tried every weekend to be extra attentive, and each week she got more and more distant. After watching this for 8 weeks, I was done. So I devised a 12-step getaway plan. Gather evidence. Get her out of the way. In order to execute my plan, I scheduled a 2-week exclusive getaway trip for us at an all-inclusive resort in Barbados. She was ecstatic. Then a week before the trip, I claimed I had to back out and told her to take a friend. I knew it was over when she showed no disappointment that I couldn't go. She scheduled a coworker to go with her. Terminate our apartment lease. It would expire 3 days into her trip, and I was the sole signature on the lease. Find a job in another town. The company I had been assisting in the Midwest had offered me a job with a slight increase in salary. Find a new place to live. I got an apartment in the above-mentioned location. When she is gone, perform the following. Take her to the airport, go back home, and pack all her things same day. Saturday 7. Get a new phone number/phone/email. Cancel all social media. Monday 8. Separate us completely in regard to finances. We withdrew all monies from our joint accounts and then closed them. I put all her money in an envelope and packed it in her things. Monday 9. Have the movers pack all my things up and ship them west. Monday 10. Take all her things to her mother's house, 600 miles away. All my fiance's belongings fit into the back and bed of my F-250 crew cab. Tuesday through Saturday. 11. Give her mother the evidence. 12. Start my new life. I didn't want to do anything that was illegal, so I made sure that nothing of hers was missing. It was so hard to pack all her stuff nice and neatly away. I never cried so hard in my life. I have read so many times on Reddit about SOs saying they will never do it again when caught, but they don't stop. My hope was that she would genuinely confess so we could forgive and move on. She never did. Twice she came really close, but her secret was too hard for her to reveal. Tuesday morning, I left our apartment north of DC for the last time. It took 10 hours to get to her mom's house. What happened when I got there, I was not prepared for. I arrived at her mom's house around 8 in the evening. I figured she would be surprised to see me since I was coming down unannounced. Since they lived in a gated community, I had to buzz her house from the front gate, so she was waiting for me outside when I drove up. I could tell that she had been crying when I walked up to see her. I asked her what was wrong, and she hugged me, saying that she thought her husband was cheating on her with a much younger, skinnier, and prettier woman. Dumbfounded, I just held her for what was probably 10 minutes. She soaked my right shoulder with her tears and snot. When she finally composed herself, I asked if we could go in a talk. We went in, and I asked where her husband was, and she indicated that he said he was going fishing with his buddies at a remote cabin an hour away. Then she said, "He hates fishing." She gave me all the indications that she had picked up on, and apparently it had been going on for about a year. So, doing a little bit of research, we found a credit card hold charge for a 5-star hotel that was only 20 minutes away. On call later confirmed her husband was in fact there for a 4-night stay cheating with his mistress. 2 peas in a pod, I said. What? She responded. 2 peas in a pod. I said again. Your husband is cheating on you, and your daughter is cheating on me. That's why I came here to drop her stuff off and move to XXXX. I showed her the evidence in a binder on screen captures I had made. After looking at the first 3 or 4 pages, she looked at me dumbfounded. We both hugged and cried for a good 30 minutes. At that point, she said stop crying and looked at me and said, "Well, tonight there is nothing we can do about it, except for you and I to knock out these 3 bottles of Moscato and F in every room of the house." She grabbed 2 wine glasses and a bottle of Moscato wine and walked out to their private pool deck, saying, "Are you coming out here, or are you going to get effing revenge?" Now I won't go into much detail because I don't want to get blue balls, but that night, and for the next 3 days, we F-ed nonstop. I put myself in every hole her beautiful body could offer. I must have cammed in or on her 25 plus times in that period. After those days were over, we passionately said goodbye, and I drove to my new destination. She kept me informed as to everything that happened when my ex-fiancé got back. The day fiancé got back was epic. I canceled my phone the morning of the day she got back. So when the plane landed and she called for a ride, it indicated the phone was disconnected. She apparently had her lover take her home. He dropped her off and left. When she came to the door, a strange couple new tenants answered the door, and she freaked out. I can't tell you how many times she tried to call me because again the number was no longer valid. She went to her girlfriend's to stay for a time as a coworker was already married. When she called her mom in a panic, her mom told her that I had come down and dropped off all her things and mentioned that all her money was down there as well. 600 miles away. Her mom didn't tell her that she had F-ed me more in 3 days than my fiancé, and I had in the last 6 months. But she did tell her that she knew that she was cheating on me. And I said I had found a new job, a place to stay, and a new career far away from her and all the friends we had. And that her mother was separating from her father due to infidelity. Apparently she cried for days and took a week off of work. But alas, she found comfort in the arms of her married lover. Her mom never let her know where I was. I had completely cut off that part of my life. The only link I had to that old life was my fiancé's mom. And she has kept our secret to this day. Fiancé was ghosted the most. TLDR, fiancé cheated. Ghosted her life to start my own. Got with her mom. Update in comments. Here is a little bit of the aftermath that happened. As for the timing of the events that let me leave her, a lot of it was extremely fortunate timing for the lease ending, the job search success, and the phone plan ending. Things could have gone down much differently had any of those things been different. Aftermath. My ex-fiance's mother Ephraim kept in touch with me for several months afterwards, since we had a mutual loss of relationships and shared in a revenge of sorts against our sows. However, neither of our respective sows found out what happened between Ephraim and me. Ephraim eventually came out to see me after 7 months in my new location. But much to many of you guys' disappointment, we only talked. We both actually regretted what we had done together, but acknowledged that it was in the past, and in the heat of the moment. Days of heat and moments. She said that her daughter knew that she Ephraim knew where I was, and was very upset that she would not divulge my location. Ephraim asked if she could tell my ex-fiancé where I was and give her a way to contact me. But I asked that she not tell her as I was in my new life. Ephraim and I talked extensively about the possibility of her and her so staying together and working it out. Ephraim said her husband was extremely remorseful and came clean on everything. Ephraim said it was a lot to take in and had asked him what he was going to do to earn back her trust. He gave her all his digital passwords and let her see everything he had ever done to hurt their marriage. Ephraim ended up being very angry, but recognized that he was actually trying to repair the marriage. Ephraim said her forgiveness to him would come in time, but the trust would take longer. What caused him to snap back into reality was that she confronted him about the affair and showed him the evidence of what his daughter had done to me. Also, Ephraim was an amazing woman in every way imaginable. She also stated that if he went outside the marriage, then she would be allowed to do so again. He picked up on the again phrase and asked her what she meant. She told him that as soon as she found out he was cheating, she F'd the first eligible guy she found. He was devastated. Ephraim said they cried a lot and agreed to separate for a short time to give each other time to articulate their thoughts and see if they both wanted to fight for the marriage. Eventually, they went to marriage counseling and are still together as of May 2020. As for my ex-fiancée, well, she was devastated by what I had done to her. When she finally went to her parents to gather her things, she was shown the evidence of the affair and was extremely embarrassed. Ephraim had to edit the binder so that when her father saw it, he would not see pictures a father should not see of his daughter. Regardless, the ex-fiancée was crushed. She did not find out that her mother had my contact information until months later. Ex begged her mother for my information, and it put quite the strain on their relationship. But her mother also told her that if she had tried to find and/or contact me, all the evidence would be released forever on the internet by me. This insistence of my ex-fiancée to divulge my information is what prompted her to come and see me. She was also upset about her parents having trouble in their marriage. According to Ephraim, the ex-fiancée was depressed for several months and sought counseling. She had immediately broke off the affair with a coworker once she returned from her parents' place in Louisville, Kentucky, and looked to find a new place of employment. Recently, December 2019, I found out that she was married, has 2 beautiful twin daughters with a stand-up guy, and still lives in the DC area. According to Ephraim, she now worked from home and was loving her new life. I'm glad that she was able to right her founding ship and have a happy start in life again. I recently destroyed all the incriminating evidence I had on my ex-fiancée, as I didn't want to be that guy who would hold her hostage for the rest of her life. I did ask Ephraim to let my ex-fiancée know this. If I had been on the potential receiving end of that information bomb, then it would have caused me many sleepless nights. As for myself, well, let's just say I am satisfied with my current life. Ephraim and I talked every few months initially, but now we talk once and maybe twice a year. Usually, it's a short note updating each other on life's little changes. The only question that remains unanswered for me is that if Ephraim and her husband were able to repair their marriage, would it have been possible for my ex-fiancée and me to have repaired ours? But I never gave it the chance. One can only speculate. Our lives are on vastly different planes now. Second story. I just discovered my daughter of 15 years isn't my biological one, but an affair baby my wife created. Now my daughter won't let go of me, begging me to adopt her while SLT shaming her mother, and kicked her out of the house, disowning her. Secret voices. Hey guys, just a little heads up. OP might sound like a doormat. Some of the update material might sound repetitive. This is because it was not written at one time. I was journaling. I was simply recording what happened, and to anyone going through a similar situation, keeping a written record helped. I was able to go back and look at things I wrote and analyze everything to try to understand what I was thinking at that time. I just found out my 15-year-old daughter is not my biological child. My daughter was preparing for a family tree project for an online class and wanted an ancestry test. My father is half Native American, but he died several years ago, and I don't know precisely what Native American blood is in the family. My daughter came to me because it was my father, and we didn't mention it to her mother at the time. Well, it turned out my daughter doesn't have any Native American blood. The obvious conclusion didn't occur to me at first, because the truth of the situation didn't seem possible. I assumed there was a mistake. My first thought was that my father hadn't been part Native American. So I took the test, and everything became apparent. It was a very emotional situation for me and my daughter. What I will remember the most is that after she started crying, she hugged so tightly and just kept saying over and over, "I love you, Daddy." At home, I confronted my wife, and she looked like she'd had a stroke. She started crying and apologizing. You can probably imagine it. My wife and I got married because she was pregnant. We had been together for more than a year when it happened. It turns out she was sleeping with multiple guys at the time. She says it didn't mean anything, and she doesn't even remember some of their names. When she realized she was pregnant, she said she wasn't sure who his father was, since I was unaware of her extracurricular activities. She let me believe I was the father because I was the most financially stable. In terms of that, she may have chosen correctly. I have been very successful in my career, and building passive income streams has been a hobby of mine for a long time. My daughter got my wife to admit to this on tape, as my daughter records the whole thing. I asked my wife several times, and she keeps insisting that she has been faithful for the entire time we have been married. I've never suspected anything, but I also didn't realize she was sleeping around before we got married, so I've said I don't believe her. I've come across a lot of the red flags of cheaters, and I can't think of any of them during our marriage. She doesn't use social media, and she has never been guarded about her phone. She only drinks on special occasions, and doesn't go out for girls' night or anything. Also, she is a stay-at-home wife mom, so there aren't any coworkers to worry about. She exercises at home, as we have a very nice home gym. I don't believe her when she says she hasn't cheated after getting married, but I can't think of anything suspicious. We have a prenup, so I'm not worried about divorce if it comes to that. My daughter is another story. She is absolutely livid about the whole situation. I know teenagers can be emotional. I certainly remember how I was at her age. But she has never been very expressive, something I thought she or from me nature versus nurture. My daughter can't stand to be around her mother. She has said some truly awful things to her mother. Basically variations of calling her a dirty SLT who ruined our family. Whenever my wife tries to talk to her, my daughter yells and swears and cries like I have never seen. Christmas is coming up, and my daughter is demanding my wife leave the house until after New Year's so she can spend time with her real family, meaning me. My daughter has even come to me privately, saying that in the event of divorce, she wants to stay with me. She has even asked if it is possible to disown her mother and be adopted by me. I haven't told this to my wife. My wife is preparing to leave for her parents' house for the holidays. My wife and I had talked about the situation, but have decided to wait until after New Year's to make any decisions. I admit I'm grateful she agreed to leave because, honestly, I need some time to process this. I think I'm writing this as a way to just come to terms with everything that has happened. Edit. After writing this post, I fell asleep for a few hours. I came back to the post after about 10 hours and realized there were more than 200 messages. Thanks to everyone who took the time to comment. It means a lot. Additionally, thanks for all of the compassion and kind comments. I was touched by the displays of support, and I'm not ashamed to say I shed a few tears. I still haven't read every message, but know I intend to whether or not I respond to yours specifically. I want to address two consistent things mentioned in the comments. I've had a DNA test. After our ancestry tests were different due to her lack of Native American blood, we got proper DNA tests. That was when I confronted my wife. Looking back at the original post, I'm sorry for not making that clear. I have made it clear in no uncertain terms that she is my daughter, and I am her father regardless of the situation. I've reiterated to her repeatedly that she can stay with me, and I will never leave her. Several comments suggested she might be scared I will leave her or want nothing more to do with her. Nothing could be farther from the truth, and I tell her every day. Update. Thank you once again to everyone who took time to comment. I was noted to address a few comments with some more information. Some people wanted to know if I have any more children, and the answer is no. For no specific reason. We just never had more children. Once again, I realize I did not make it clear in the original post, but I did have a proper test done and confirmed that my daughter is not biologically related to me. Regardless, I have raised her for 15 years, and she will always be my daughter. I have heard the arguments against this, and I remain unconvinced. My relationship with my wife has always been good. She has always been a wonderful wife and mother. But I admit that this situation has raised some obvious doubts and obstacles. After my wife left, my daughter calmed down considerably, but is still obviously shaken. We managed to all it out, and she explained why she got so upset. Apparently, she knows kids at school whose parents are divorced because of infidelity. In most of the cases, especially when the mother was the one cheating, the father tended to distance himself from the family. My daughter knows of one child, not a close friend, whose father moved across the country after the divorce. The father only sees his children once or twice a year now. All of this was going through my daughter's head when she realized what her mother had done. My wife wants to talk with me and my daughter very much. Basically, just to give her a chance to explain. My birthday is a few days before Christmas, and my daughter has agreed to a video chat with her mother. I assured my daughter that if all she wants to do is listen, then that's fine. She doesn't have to say anything. That's what's happened since, and I guess I'll just have to wait and see what happens next. Thanks for reading. Further updates. My daughter and I have been spending a lot of time together, just playing games and watching movies and stuff like that. But even if I'm doing work on my computer or anything else around the house, she just wants to be in the same room as me. Even if she is just playing on her iPad. After the initial shock of everything that happened, I started to calm down and reminded myself of a few things. I think the reason I have been so successful is that I don't make emotional decisions or act rashly or hastily. I have always taken time to evaluate a situation and make choices based on evidence. So I hired professional help. I had a private investigator keep an eye on my wife. She has location service on her phone and GPS on her car. But the PI confirmed that she only left her parents' house once to go to the supermarket. Her parents had called me after a couple days wanting to know if my wife was okay. My father-in-law said my wife only left her room for meals and hadn't left the house since. The supermarket was a day or two later. The second guy I hired was tech-savvy. He is a friend of a friend and helped me go through my wife's computer and phone and accounts. I was both impressed and unnerved about what this guy was capable of doing. We did a deep search that went back years. I don't want to go into all the details of my investigation, but I found zero evidence of any type of affair. All of this made me think a lot. I reread my original post, and I realized that what I wrote about getting married because of the pregnancy might have meant more than I thought. Maybe we didn't get married for love. I certainly think we have grown to love each other, and I still think we are in love. I realized that she lied, but something really great came from that, and one person left a comment that I hadn't considered. If you are reading, then thank you for the insight. The comment talked about how all of my wife's efforts to stay home and be a good wife and mother may have all been intentional and a sign of her remorse and guilt for everything she had done. My wife has been discreetly contacting me since leaving the house, and we have chatted a little, but it's not about important stuff. After thinking about everything I didn't find, I agreed to talk with her after my daughter went to sleep. She did not look so great. She had obviously been crying and probably not sleeping well. It was a long conversation, but she just apologized again for lying. She said she had always hoped I was the father. She admitted that she was young, dumb, reckless, and irresponsible, but getting pregnant made her reevaluate everything. She said she regrets blurting out that she chose me because I was the most financially stable, although she admits that was part of it. She had a long list of reasons why she chose me. I'm not going to summarize everything, but I believe she is sincere when she says all she wants is to do whatever it takes for us to be able to be a family again. We agreed it may never be exactly as it was before, but I said I'm not ready to throw away the best 15 years of my life. Yes, that is exactly what they have been. I have to admit that I could not have asked for a better wife or mother for my child. The sense of relief seemed to overwhelm her, and she broke down crying again. Today is my birthday, and as planned, the three of us had our talk online. My daughter was very quiet for most of it. I talked a little about what we had been doing while I was at her parents'. Nothing too excited. Then my wife said to my daughter that she just wants to explain herself. I've always believed that there is a difference between an explanation and an excuse. She did not try to justify herself or put the blame on anything or anyone else. Basically, she told our daughter the same thing she told me. Once again, it was a long conversation that I can't summarize in a few sentences. But it was good. My daughter was very attentive, and the only thing she asked was if my wife knew who the real dad was. I was unexpectedly moved by my wife's answer. Your real dad is sitting next to you. That made my daughter cry openly. She apologized for the things she said to her mother in the beginning. I admit that my wife may have just been stroking my ego and saying what she knew I wanted to hear. Based on the fact that I could find no evidence of my wife being unfaithful and just the conversations, I think we can move past this. My daughters are going to start counseling after the new year, and eventually we will have couple family therapy as well. We talked about having Christmas together in a few days as a family. This whole thing has been a real roller coaster, but I'm optimistic at the moment. I was having a drink by myself to toast my birthday after my daughter went to bed. I think it will be possible for the three of us to be a family again. I certainly want to be. I really liked hearing the things she said. Of course, I can guess why she said a lot of them. I'm thinking a lot about what my daughter said about her real father. That hurt the more I thought about it. I don't think she intended to hurt me, and I'm not sure she even realizes how it sounded. But it wasn't fun. We're still spending a lot of time together, and it's been great. I'm not going to ask her about finding her biological father, and if she brings it up, then I'll just cross that bridge when it's time. We went to my wife's parents for Christmas Eve. My brother and mother met us there, and it was a fun time. Before coming over to me, my wife and daughter agreed that we would be polite and cordial, but maybe keep a discreet distance. The day was as you would expect it to be, spending time with the family. That evening, my wife came home with us. When we got home, the two of them spent time talking alone. With a few Christmas cookies I hand, my daughter went to her room for the rest of the night. When my wife and I were alone, we talked more. She reiterated a lot of the things she had already said. I think I mentioned this already, but there was one commenter, if you're listening, thank you, who said that all her choices to stay home might have been intentional. My wife did not say these exact words, but that was the basic message. After getting pregnant, she realized that she had to grow up, and she said she worked as hard as possible and did everything she could think of to be the perfect wife and mother. By this point, we were actually in our bedroom. She got down on her knees and said she would redouble her efforts to be even better. She said she knew I was considering divorce, but all she said was, "Please give me a chance to prove myself." She said if there was anything I needed from her anything she could do, then she would do it without hesitation. All she wanted was to keep our family together. It's difficult to fully describe the emotion of everything that has happened, but I believe in her sincerity in this moment. We spent a very passionate night together. Christmas was a good time. I'm not going to say it was perfect. We were aware of the elephant in the room, but it was still a good day. It was the first time just the three of us were alone since the truth was uncovered. But we did have a good day. We had our traditional Christmas breakfast, and then we watched the movie, It's a Wonderful Life, before we opened presents. One of the gifts to our daughter was a video game console, and she asked if we could organize a family game night. And this made my wife cry. She left the room and came back composed. But I think she just wasn't expecting something like that. I think I already mentioned that we are going to do some therapy after New Year's. I don't think there is anything else to say at this point. I'm not going to say everything will work out for everyone dealing with similar situations, but I think me and my family will be able to move on. Thank you for everyone who commented the first time around. It helped more than I thought would. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. TLDR, I learned my 15-year-old daughter is not my biological child. The wife did not know who the father was but chose me because I was the best option. We may try to work it out. Comments. Deleted. No offense, but you sound like a doormat. Of course she chose you because you were going to provide her with the best life and were easy to use and cuckold. There is nothing to be proud of that statement. There is nothing to be proud of it being used. But don't worry, life will always be happy as long as you keep being a doormat, just like you have been for the last 15 years. Good luck. Bear_nuts. Not gonna lie, I'd just get a divorce. She literally lied to you and made you raise someone else's kid. Someone who, BTW, doesn't even know they have a child out there. The real father deserves to know he has a child. IMO. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.